2020, Marcus is scrolling his phone, sees some short video about saving money and thinks, you know what? I'm going to try this thing. $1 a day. He figures worst case, he wastes 12 months and saves $365. Best case, maybe it teaches him something. He grabs one of those glass jars, you know, the ones, big mason jar. Looks like something your grandma used to keep buttons in, and he puts it on his desk. And every single morning, before he does anything else, he takes $1 out of his wallet and he drops it in the jar. Now pause here, because I need you to understand something about what Marcus just did. He didn't make a financial decision. He made a psychological one. And that difference is everything. Most people think personal finance is about math. And look, the math matters. We're going to get into that in a second. And some of these numbers are genuinely going to surprise you. But the reason most people never build wealth isn't because they can't do math. It's because they never build the identity of someone who saves. Marcus, without even realizing it, just started building a new identity. Every morning, $1 in the jar. He's not an investor yet. He's not financially free yet. But he is, for the first time, someone who saves. And that matters more than almost anything else in this entire conversation. Okay, so let's talk about the math, because this is where it gets really interesting. From January 1st, 2020 to today, 2026, that's roughly 6 years. 6 years times 365 days is 2,190 days. So if Marcus saved exactly $1 every single day without missing a single day, he now has $2,190 sitting in that jar. And I can already hear some of you going, that's it? That's what this video is about? $2,000? Hold on. We're just getting started, because Marcus didn't keep it in a jar. After the first month, Marcus had about $30. He opened a high yield savings account. And look, in 2020, these accounts were actually paying decent interest. Some of them hitting close to 2% APY before the Fed started doing what the Fed does. But more importantly, after a few months, Marcus started reading and he found out about index funds, specifically the S&P 500. And if you don't know what that is, here's the simplest explanation I can give you. The S&P 500 is basically a basket of the 500 biggest companies in America. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all of them. When you invest in an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, you're not betting on one company. You're betting on the entire American economy. And historically, and this is a real number, this is not something I'm making up, the S&P 500 has returned an average of about 10% per year over the last 50 years. Some years it's up 30%, some years, like 2022, it gets absolutely crushed. But the average over time, about 10%. So Marcus, being the slightly more informed version of himself that he's becoming, starts automatically transferring his saved dollars into a low-cost index fund every single month. And here is where the story gets wild. Because here's something that most people fundamentally do not understand about investing, and I think it's one of the biggest reasons people stay broke even when they're technically making okay money. It's called compound interest. And I know you've heard this word before, but I want to show you what it actually means in real life, not in some textbook definition that makes your eyes glaze over. Imagine you have a snowball, small snowball, right? Like the size of your fist, and you put it at the top of a really long hill covered in snow. When you push it, at first it seems like nothing is happening. It rolls a little, picks up a tiny bit of snow, still looks pretty small, but as it keeps rolling, it picks up more snow, which makes it bigger, which means it picks up even more snow, which makes it even bigger. And by the time it reaches the bottom of the hill, it's enormous. It's not the same snowball you started with. It's something completely different. That's compound interest. Your money makes money. And then that money makes money, and it keeps going. Einstein, and look, whether he actually said this or not is debated, but the concept is real, supposedly called compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world. And when you actually see the numbers, you start to understand why. So Marcus is putting in roughly $30 a month because $1 a day, 30 days, $30 into an index fund starting in early 2020. Now, 2020 was actually a fascinating year to start investing because the market crashed hard in March, like scary hard. The S&P 500 dropped about 34% in about 5 weeks, 34%. People were panicking. Financial news channels looked like disaster movie sets. And Marcus, because he was only putting in $30 a month and had just started, did something that turned out to be accidentally genius. He kept going. He didn't have enough invested to panic. He just kept dropping his dollar a day. And what happened in the rest of 2020? The market came roaring back. By the end of 2020, the S&P 500 was actually up 18% for the year. So the people who panicked and sold in March locked in their losses. Marcus, who literally just kept putting in $1 a day, bought shares at the lowest prices and watched them recover. This is called dollar cost averaging. You invest a fixed amount regularly, regardless of what the market is doing. When prices are low, your dollar buys more shares. When prices are high, your dollar buys fewer shares. Over time, it averages out, and historically, it beats trying to time the market almost every single time. A study from Charles Schwab actually found that over a 20-year period, an investor who consistently put money in every month, regardless of market conditions, significantly outperformed investors who tried to wait for the perfect moment to invest. Because here's the truth, that Wall Street doesn't love admitting nobody knows when the perfect moment is. Not the hedge fund managers, not the financial analysts, nobody. Time in the market beats timing the market every single time. All right, so let's get back to Marcus and let's actually run these numbers properly, because this is the part I've been building toward and I don't want you to miss it. Marcus saves $1 a day, $30 a month, invested monthly into an S&P 500 index fund starting January 2020. Using a compound interest calculator, and these are publicly available, you can go check this yourself right now, with an average annual return of 10% compounded monthly over 6 years. Marcus's $2,190 of contributions has grown to approximately $2,800 to $3,000, depending on the exact timing of contributions and the specific year-by-year performance. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know. You're sitting there going, bro, that's like $800 extra dollars. Is that really the big reveal? And look, I hear you. On the surface, that doesn't sound like life-changing money. But I need you to slow down because you're missing the entire point of this story. And if you miss this point, you're going to keep missing it for the rest of your life. The dollar was never the point. The dollar was the door. And this is the psychological mechanism that nobody talks about when they give you the save your coffee money advice. They make it sound like the coffee is the problem. Like if you just stop buying lattes, you'll magically become wealthy. That's not what this is. This is about something called behavioral momentum. Once you prove to yourself that you can save consistently, even at the smallest possible level, your brain starts to recalibrate what's possible. The identity of I am someone who saves becomes I am someone who invests, which becomes I am someone who builds wealth. And that identity shift is worth infinitely more than any specific dollar amount. See, here's what actually happened to Marcus. About 6 months in, mid-2020, something shifted. He started noticing that saving the dollar felt easy. Too easy. So he asked himself a question that changed everything. He said, if $1 a day is easy, what would $5 a day feel like? So he tried it. $5 a day, still not even a Starbucks latte with oat milk and an extra shot. $5. And a few months after that, he asked the same question again. What would $10 a day feel like? By the end of year 2, 2021, Marcus is putting in $20 a day, $600 a month, still living his life, still going out, still doing the things he enjoys. But now he's got a system. And the S&P 500 inches, 2021, up 26%. His account is growing in ways that are starting to actually feel real. Let's fast forward and run the real numbers, because I want to show you what happens when you scale this thing even modestly. If Marcus had started at $1 a day in 2020 and gradually worked his way up to $10 a day, which is $300 a month by the time he's been doing this for 6 years, and invested the full amount at average S&P 500 returns, we're looking at somewhere in the range of $25,000 to $28,000. From what started as $1 a day, from a habit that costs less per day than most people spend on random background noise in their lives. And here's where I want to really twist your brain for a second, because this is the part that should genuinely make you uncomfortable in a productive way. The Federal Reserve published data showing that as of 2023, nearly 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something. 40%. nearly half the country, $400. That is less than what Marcus saved in his first 2 months. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad if you're in that situation, because a lot of people are, and it's a genuinely difficult position that isn't always the result of bad decisions. But I am saying it because it shows you exactly how low the bar actually is. $1 a day clears that bar inside of 14 months. That's it. But let's go deeper, because I think the scariest and most important number in this entire video is this one. According to a report from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median American family has about $65,000 saved for retirement. Median meaning half of all Americans have less than that. And the average retirement in America lasts about 20 years. $65,000 divided by 20 years is $3,250 per year. That's $270 a month to live on in retirement. $270 in 2026. When inflation has already made a grocery run feel like a financial event, I want you to sit with that number for a second, because that is the destination that most people are currently headed toward. Not because they're bad people, not because they're lazy, but because nobody ever showed them that the door was this simple to open. Now, let me show you something that I think is the most powerful part of all of this. It's something called the Rule of 72. This is a real mathematical shortcut that investors use. You take 72 and divide it by your annual rate of return, and that tells you how many years it takes for your money to double. So at a 10% return, 72 divided by 10 equals 7.2. Your money doubles roughly every 7 years. That means the money Marcus invested in 2020 will have doubled by 2027, and then it doubles again by 2034, and again by 2041. The snowball analogy I used earlier, this is why the hill length matters more than the size of the snowball. The longer you let it roll, the more absurd the growth becomes. A 25-year-old who starts saving and investing $300 a month and never increases, it will retire with more money than a 40-year-old who starts saving $1,000 a month. Not because the 25-year-old saved more money, the 40-year-old actually puts in more total dollars, but because the 25-year-old had more time. Time is the single most valuable asset in building wealth, and it is the one asset that is completely non-refundable once it's gone. This is why I get genuinely frustrated when I see financial content that talks to young people like the goal is to just be responsible and don't overspend. That's not a strategy. That's just slightly organized poverty. The goal should be to start building as early as humanly possible, even if you start at the most embarrassingly small amount imaginable, because the embarrassingly small amount at 22 is worth more than the impressive amount at 35. That's not an opinion. That's math. Okay, so let's bring Marcus home, because I want to show you where he actually ends up and why it matters. Marcus is now in 2026. 6 years of building this habit, this system, this identity. He's not a millionaire, let's be honest about that. But here's what he does have. He has an emergency fund, a real one, not a I could probably survive one bad month fund, an actual 6-month emergency fund that means if he lost his job tomorrow, he would have time to think clearly instead of panic applying to everything in sight. He has an investment account that's growing. He has a relationship with money that isn't based on fear or avoidance. It's based on understanding. And maybe most importantly, he has proof from his own life, from his own history, that he is someone who follows through, that he can build something, that small, consistent actions compound into real results. And that proof, that's the thing that unlocks everything else. Because the next goal doesn't seem impossible to Marcus. The next level doesn't seem out of reach. He's seen his own snowball roll down the hill. He knows how the hill works now. Here's what I want you to take away from this. And I want to be really direct with you because I think you deserve that. Most financial advice is either too complicated or too vague. It either makes you feel like you need a finance degree to get started, or it just tells you to spend less than you earn. Like that's some kind of revelation. What Marcus's story shows you is something different. It shows you that the entry point to building real financial stability is lower than almost any excuse you could come up with. $1 per day. That's $30 a month. That's the price of 2 fast food meals. That is genuinely the smallest possible version of a decision that changes everything. Now look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that $1 a day alone is going to make you rich. That would be dishonest and you'd see right through it. But I am going to tell you that $1 a day builds the habit, and the habit builds the identity, and the identity unlocks the behavior. And the behavior, compounded over time with consistent increases and smart investing, builds wealth. That is the actual chain. And most people never see it because they're waiting for the moment when they can afford to start for real. They're waiting until they make more money, until the timing is better, until they feel ready. And that wait costs them the one thing they can never get back. The best time to start was January 1st, 2020. The second best time is right now, today, whatever day you're watching this. I want you to do something before you close this video. Not tomorrow, not after you finish scrolling. Right now, open your banking app, set up an automatic transfer, even if it's just $25 or $30 to a separate savings account. Name it something that means something to you. Future Marcus, my emergency fund, the jar. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that you make it automatic, because the secret to every person who successfully builds wealth is not that they have more discipline than you. It's that they automated the decision, so discipline wasn't required. The money moves before they can spend it. The choice is already made. And then once you've got a month or two of that built up, open a brokerage account, Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, they're all solid, and start putting that money into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Set it and forget it. Don't check it every day. Don't panic when the market drops. Remember, Marcus, in March 2020, the people who held on and kept investing during the crash were the ones who won. The market will go up and it will go down, and it will feel terrifying and it will feel exciting. And through all of that, your job is to keep rolling the snowball down the hill. $1, one habit, one identity shift. That's the whole game. You now know something that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. The question is what you're going to do with it. And I think you already know the answer.